Imagine two armies standing across from each other. Thousands of soldiers, weapons ready, generals waiting for the signal. Everyone expects the same thing: a battle. But one commander refuses to fight. Instead, he studies his enemy. He studies the terrain. He studies the weather. He studies the enemy's emotions. He cuts their supply lines. He destroys their alliances. He spreads confusion through their ranks. And before the two armies ever truly clash, the enemy collapses. This was the kind of warfare imagined by one of history's most influential strategists. His name was Sun Tzu. More than 2,000 years ago, he wrote a short military treatise that would become one of the most famous books on strategy ever created: The Art of War. But Sun Tzu's ideas were not really about winning battles. They were about something much more dangerous: winning before the battle begins. Sun Tzu is believed to have lived during ancient China's turbulent age of warfare. Traditionally, he is identified as Sun Wu, a military strategist associated with the state of Wu. But even today, historians debate exactly how much we truly know about the historical Sun Tzu. Later Chinese tradition tells us that he served King Heilu of Wu. And according to the famous historian Sima Qian, Sun Tzu demonstrated his military discipline in an extraordinary way. The king supposedly gave Sun Tzu a group of palace women and challenged him to train them as soldiers. Sun Tzu divided them into units. He explained the commands. Then he ordered them to perform a military maneuver. They laughed. They did not obey. Sun Tzu explained the commands again. They laughed again. And Sun Tzu responded with a principle that would become central to his philosophy. When soldiers fail to understand an order, the commander is responsible. But once the orders are clearly understood, failure to obey becomes the soldier's responsibility. The story is dramatic, and whether every detail is historical or not, it captures something important about the image of Sun Tzu: a commander obsessed with discipline, clarity, and control. To understand Sun Tzu, we need to understand his world. Ancient China was not a single unified empire. It was divided among powerful states competing for survival. The period was filled with diplomacy, espionage, alliances, betrayals, sieges, assassinations, and enormous armies. War was becoming more organized. States mobilized larger populations. Agriculture became directly connected to military power. And rulers discovered a brutal truth: a country could win a battle and still lose the war. An army could destroy its enemy and bankrupt itself doing it. A general could capture a city and create 10 more enemies. Sun Tzu understood this problem, and his solution was revolutionary. The purpose of war was not destruction. The purpose of war was achieving your objective at the lowest possible cost. One of Sun Tzu's most famous principles can be summarized like this: the highest form of victory is to defeat the enemy without fighting. Think about how radical that idea is. Most people imagine war as a contest of strength. Who has more soldiers? Who has better weapons? Who has the stronger army? Sun Tzu asked a different question. What if you could make your enemy surrender without giving him the opportunity to fight effectively? Imagine an enemy army preparing for battle. You don't attack.
Instead, you convince their allies to abandon them. You disrupt their food supply. You force them to march in the wrong direction. You make them believe your army is somewhere it isn't. You exploit disagreements between their commanders. You turn their confidence into fear. And eventually, the enemy commander realizes that fighting you is hopeless. No glorious final battle. No enormous casualty list.
Just victory. That was Sun Tzu's ideal.
But how do you defeat an enemy without fighting? Sun Tzu's answer begins with information. One of his most famous teachings is the importance of knowing both yourself and your enemy. If you understand yourself, but not your enemy, you may win some battles and lose others. If you understand neither, you are gambling with your army. But if you understand both, you dramatically increase your chances of victory. This is why Sun Tzu placed enormous importance on intelligence. Spies, scouts, maps, terrain, weather, enemy morale, political divisions, command structure. Everything mattered. To Sun Tzu, information was not something that came after strategy. Information was strategy. Sun Tzu understood something that many commanders throughout history learned the hard way. An army is not just weapons and soldiers. It is also morale. Fear can destroy an army before an enemy's sword ever reaches it. Confusion can be more powerful than force, and perception can become reality. Sun Tzu therefore emphasized deception. Make the enemy believe you are somewhere else. Appear weak when you are strong. Appear distant when you are close. Make your enemy react to a threat that doesn't exist. And while they are reacting, you control the battlefield. This is psychological warfare. The enemy isn't simply fighting your army. They are fighting the picture of your army inside their own mind. Sun Tzu also understood that armies do not fight in empty space. They fight on terrain. A river can become a defensive wall. A mountain can become a fortress. A narrow valley can turn numerical superiority into a weakness. A swamp can destroy an army's movement. And an exposed plain can become a death trap. For Sun Tzu, the commander who understood terrain could force the enemy to fight under unfavorable conditions. This leads to one of his most important ideas. Never fight the battle your enemy wants. Force them to fight the battle you prepared for. That principle has survived thousands of years because it applies far beyond ancient warfare. Sun Tzu also understood the value of speed. Not simply moving quickly, but making decisions faster than the enemy. If your opponent is still deciding what to do, and you have already acted, you control the situation. Speed creates surprise. Surprise creates confusion. Confusion creates mistakes. And mistakes create opportunities. The strongest army isn't always the one with the most soldiers. Sometimes it is the army that can move, adapt, and react faster. Sun Tzu was not romantic about war. He understood its cost. Armies need food. Weapons need production. Soldiers need wages. Horses need supplies. Campaigns consume enormous resources. The longer a war continues, the greater the economic damage. And that creates a dangerous paradox. You can win the battlefield while destroying the country that sent you there.
Sun Tzu therefore warned against prolonged warfare. The ideal commander does not seek endless glory. He seeks a decisive result. Fast, efficient, controlled. Because every unnecessary day of war creates another opportunity for disaster.
Sun Tzu believed commanders needed to consider several fundamental factors before entering war. The first was moral influence, whether the people would support their ruler. The second was heaven, the changing conditions of time, weather, and seasons. The third was earth, distance, terrain, danger, and opportunity. The fourth was the commander, judgment, courage, discipline, intelligence, and leadership. And the fifth was method and discipline, organization, logistics, command structure, and control. Notice something. Weapons are not at the center. Numbers are not at the center. Raw strength is not at the center. Sun Tzu's approach is much broader. Victory is created by combining information, leadership, timing, terrain, logistics, discipline, and psychology. The battle itself is only the final expression of those decisions.
Sun Tzu lived in a world of bronze weapons, horses, chariots, and fortified cities. Yet his ideas survived into completely different eras. Generals studied his principles. Military academies discussed his writings. Strategists applied concepts of deception, intelligence, positioning, and indirect victory. And eventually, Sun Tzu's influence escaped the battlefield entirely. His ideas began appearing in discussions about leadership, negotiation, business, politics, competition, and decision-making. Why? Because Sun Tzu wasn't really teaching people how to swing a sword. He was teaching them how to think.
Perhaps the most important lesson of Sun Tzu is not about defeating an enemy. It is about avoiding unnecessary conflict. The strongest strategist is not necessarily the person who can fight the hardest. It is the person who understands when fighting is unnecessary, when to advance, when to retreat, when to wait, when to deceive, when to negotiate, when to strike, and when to do absolutely nothing. Sun Tzu understood that victory begins long before armies meet. It begins with preparation, with information, with discipline, with understanding your opponent, and most importantly, with understanding yourself.
More than 2,000 years ago, Sun Tzu wrote ideas about war that would survive the world that created them. Weapons changed. Armies changed. Empires rose and disappeared. But human nature remained remarkably similar. People still make decisions from fear. They still underestimate their opponents. They still confuse strength with victory. And they still enter battles they never needed to fight. That is why Sun Tzu remains relevant. Because his greatest lesson was never fight better. It was think better. The greatest victory may not be the battle you win. It may be the battle you make unnecessary. Sun Tzu did not teach the world how to fight. He taught the world how to win.